The cold emptiness of space stretched endlessly, a sea of stars shining like frozen sparks. Among the drifting debris of forgotten battles and abandoned ships, a small vessel moved quietly. Its name was the Starhawk, a rusty cargo hauler owned by a lone salvager named Ethan Cross. Ethan was not a hero, not a soldier, not a famous explorer. He was just a man searching for things others had thrown away. He made his living collecting lost cargo, broken droids, and dead ship parts. But that night, at the edge of the galaxy, he found something different, something strange. The Starhawk's sensors picked up a large metal object floating silently in the void. No signal, no ID, no power reading. It looked like an old shipping container, about 40 feet long, scarred and burned from age. Most salvagers would ignore it, thinking it was junk. But Ethan was not like most people. He felt something about that container, something that whispered curiosity into his mind. He adjusted his ship's thrusters and slowly approached. The AI assistant, a calm female voice named Iris, spoke through the intercom. "Warning. The object is unregistered, no ownership code detected. Possible hazard," Ethan smiled slightly. "Yeah, that's what makes it interesting." He activated the magnetic clamps and pulled the container into his cargo bay. The metal made a deep thud as it touched the ship. Echoing through the narrow corridors, Ethan stood before it, staring at the faded markings scratched into the surface, symbols he had never seen before, glowing faintly like dying stars. He brushed his hand across the surface, and for a moment, it felt warm, almost alive. Iris spoke again, her tone uneasy. "Ethan, I am detecting strange radiation, not harmful, but unique," Ethan replied. "Maybe it's alien tech, maybe it's treasure. Let's find out." He grabbed his plasma cutter and slowly traced along the sealed edge. Sparks flickered like tiny stars as the blade cut through metal. When the final lock broke, a rush of cold mist burst out. Rolling across the floor, the air turned icy, and a heartbeat, soft, slow, but steady, echoed from inside. Ethan froze, his hand trembling slightly. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "I am detecting biosigns," Iris answered. "Human-like, but not human." Ethan's eyes widened. He stepped back as the mist began to clear. Inside the container, a glass pod lay surrounded by wires and tubes. And inside the pod was a girl. Her skin was soft violet, glowing faintly in the dim light. Her long silver hair floated gently as if caught in a dream. She looked peaceful, almost angelic, but something about her presence felt powerful. "Dangerous." Ethan's heart raced. "What are you?" he whispered, touching the glass. The pod's lights flickered, then went dark. A loud hiss filled the room as the seal broke. The lid lifted with a slow creak, releasing a final burst of freezing air. The girl's eyes snapped open, bright, shining silver. She gasped for air and sat up suddenly. Ethan stumbled back, dropping his tool. She looked around in confusion, her breath heavy, her expression fierce. "Where am I?" she shouted, her voice echoing through the cargo bay. Ethan raised his hands. "Easy, easy, you're safe." Before he could finish, she moved like lightning. Her hand shot forward, grabbing him by the throat. Her strength was unreal, far beyond human. Ethan struggled to breathe, his eyes wide with shock. "Release me," she said coldly, her eyes glowing brighter. "I am not your experiment," Ethan managed to choke out. "I'm not. I found you. In the container." For a moment, she hesitated, her grip loosening slightly. She looked around, confusion mixing with anger. Then she released him and he fell to the floor. Gasping for air, she stumbled backward, clutching her head. Fragments of memory flashing through her mind. Metal walls, soldiers, cold sleep, betrayal. She whispered a word Ethan didn't understand. Something alien. Iris spoke softly through the ship's speakers. "Ethan, her biology matches no known species, but her vitals are unstable." Ethan slowly stood up, still breathing hard. "Hey, listen," he said carefully. "You were trapped in there, maybe for a long time. I didn't mean to hurt you." The girl looked at him, her eyes full of fury and sadness. "You freed me," she said slowly. "But freedom has a price," Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the ship's viewport, where the stars glowed like silent witnesses. Her expression turned distant, almost mournful. "They will come for me," she whispered. "And when they do, you will wish you never opened that container." The lights in the cargo bay flickered again. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine, somewhere deep in space. A signal activated, silent but strong. Something ancient had awakened, and the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The Starhawk floated silently in the dark sea of space, its metal hull glowing faintly under the light of distant stars. Inside the ship, chaos filled the air. Alarms flashed red, and Ethan struggled to understand what had just happened. He leaned against the wall, his throat burning where the alien girl had grabbed him. She stood in the center of the cargo bay, breathing heavily, her silver eyes scanning everything like a wild animal trapped in a cage. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of the ship's engines hummed through the silence. Iris, the ship's AI, finally broke the stillness, her voice calm but tense. "Ethan, her heart rate is rising rapidly. I suggest you retreat." Ethan wiped the sweat from his face, still catching his breath. "She's not a machine, Iris. She's alive." And scared, the alien girl tilted her head, confused by the voice coming from the walls. Her voice trembled with both anger and pride. "Where have you taken me, human? What world is this?" Ethan took a cautious step forward. "You're on my ship, the Starhawk. I found you inside that container." The girl's eyes narrowed, her expression darkening. "You dare open a royal prison without permission?" Ethan frowned. "Royal prison? What are you talking about?" She raised her hand, and suddenly the lights flickered violently. The air around her shimmered with a faint purple glow. "I was sealed for betrayal, for power, for fear," she said softly, her tone like thunder beneath calm waves. Ethan's hand hovered near the emergency panel, ready to lock her in, but something inside him hesitated. She looked lost, broken, like someone torn from her own world. "What's your name?" he asked carefully for a moment. She didn't answer. Then she straightened her back, her voice steady and commanding. "I am Lyra Vera, heir of the Ilarian Dominion." Ethan blinked. The name meant nothing to him, but Iris's voice filled the silence. "Cross-reference complete. No record of Ilarian in any human archive." Lyra turned sharply toward the voice, her eyes glowing brighter. "You keep a ghost in your ship," she said coldly. "A machine pretending to be alive," Iris replied calmly. "I am an artificial intelligence designed to assist Ethan. I mean you no harm." Lyra ignored her and focused on Ethan. "Why did you wake me?" she demanded. "Do you serve the council? The traitors who banished me?" Ethan shook his head quickly. "No, I'm just a salvager. I found your container floating near the outer belt." Her gaze softened slightly, but her tone remained sharp. "You should not have opened it." Without warning, a wave of energy burst from her body. It hit the walls of the cargo bay like a storm. Ethan was thrown backward, crashing into a crate. Sparks danced through the air as systems overloaded. Iris's voice echoed through the chaos. "Warning, unidentified energy surge detected." Ethan groaned and struggled to his feet. "Stop! You'll destroy the ship!" he shouted. Lyra clutched her head, her breathing fast. "I can't control it," she said through clenched teeth. Her body glowed brighter as the metal floor began to vibrate. Then as suddenly as it began, the light faded, and she collapsed to the ground unconscious. Ethan rushed to her side. Checking her pulse, it was strong, steady. He looked at her face, peaceful again, almost human in that moment. "Iris," he said, "run a medical scan. We need to keep her alive." "Analyzing," Iris responded. "Her physiology is stable, but she carries unknown bioenergy. She could be dangerous." Ethan sighed. "So could half the people I've met. Keep monitoring her." He gently lifted Lyra and carried her to the med bay. Her skin shimmered softly under the lights, almost like starlight on water. For a moment, Ethan felt something strange. Not fear, but curiosity mixed with awe. He placed her on the bed, activating the scanner. Lines of alien script appeared briefly on her skin, glowing and fading. "She's like a living weapon," Ethan muttered under his breath. Hours passed. Ethan sat beside her, staring at the stars outside. He wondered who she really was, what empire she came from, and why someone would lock away someone like her. Then Iris spoke quietly. "Ethan, I've detected a faint signal emitting from the container you brought on board." Ethan frowned. "A beacon." "Yes," Iris confirmed. "It's transmitting coordinates into deep space." Ethan's blood ran cold. He turned toward Lyra, who now stirred in her sleep. Her lips moved as she whispered softly, "They will come for me." A shiver ran down his spine. Whoever they were, he knew they wouldn't just be coming for her. They'd be coming for him too. He looked at the stars again, realizing he had just opened something far bigger than a simple cargo box. Somewhere out there, something ancient had awakened, and Ethan Cross was now part of it, whether he liked it or not. The Starhawk drifted through the cold dark between galaxies. Silent and alone outside, millions of stars burned like distant lanterns. But inside the ship, tension filled every corner. Ethan sat in the control chair, eyes fixed on the flickering monitor. The strange signal Iris had detected was still pulsing faintly, a repeating pattern of sound and light. "It's coming from the container," Iris reported softly. Ethan leaned closer. "Can you decode it?" "I'm trying, but the signal is layered. It's not human language," she replied. Ethan frowned, tapping his fingers against the console. "Could it be a distress call?" he asked. "Or a tracker," Iris said. Her tone cautious, Ethan sighed. "Great. So either someone's coming to rescue her or to kill us both." Behind him, the medbay door slid open with a soft hiss. Lyra stood there, weak but awake, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She wore a ship's blanket around her shoulders like a royal cloak. Her voice was calm but sharp. "You should not have let it send the signal." Ethan turned toward her, surprised. "You knew about it?" he asked. She nodded slowly, her face cold and unreadable. "It is a beacon, a key left by those who imprisoned me. It tells them I have awakened." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, frustration building. "So what now? They come to finish the job?" Lyra's gaze drifted toward the viewport, the stars reflecting in her eyes. "No, not finish, reclaim," she whispered. "Reclaim what?" Ethan asked quietly. "Me," she said, her voice trembling for the first time. "And the secret I carry." The silence that followed felt heavy. Ethan wanted to ask more, but something in her expression stopped him. He saw not anger this time, but sorrow and maybe fear. He walked closer, keeping his voice gentle. "Who are they?" Lyra looked at him for a long moment before answering. "They are the Dominion, my people, my family, the empire that once ruled half the stars." Ethan frowned. "You mean they locked you away? Their own princess?" She nodded slowly. "Because I refused to obey, because I saw the truth." Her words hung in the air like ghosts. Ethan sat on the edge of the console, trying to understand. "The truth about what?" he asked. Lyra stepped closer, the glow of the monitors lighting her face. "That our power is dying," she said softly. "The Alarian Dominion feeds on stars, draining their light to keep our cities alive. I tried to stop them, I failed, and they sealed me away." Ethan stared at her, speechless. "You're saying your people destroy stars?" Lyra's eyes filled with quiet pain. "Yes, and now they will come to finish the last spark that opposes them." Iris's voice broke the silence. "Ethan, the signal's range is increasing. It's attracting multiple vessels." Ethan snapped back to focus. "How long until they reach us?" 2 hours, maybe less," Iris answered. Ethan turned to Lyra. "Then we need to leave." Lyra shook her head slowly. "You cannot hide from them. They will track the energy signature. Your ship is too small, too weak." Ethan grinned faintly, despite the fear tightening his chest. "Yeah, well, I've been outsmarting bigger ships my whole life." Lyra tilted her head, studying him with curiosity. "Humans," she murmured. "Always running, always fighting, even when the universe burns around them." Ethan smiled. "You noticed for the first time." A small laugh escaped her lips, and soft and unexpected. It was gone as quickly as it came, but Ethan caught a glimpse of the person behind the power. He turned to the control panel and began typing commands. "Iris, prepare for a silent jump. Random vector. No trail." "Understood," the AI replied. Lyra watched him work, her expression thoughtful. "Why are you helping me, human?" she asked. Ethan didn't look up. "Because you didn't deserve to be locked away." Her voice softened. "You don't even know what I am," Ethan replied. "Maybe not, but I know what it feels like to be alone." For a brief moment, the cold air between them felt warmer, but the peace didn't last. The ship shuddered violently and alarms blared again. "Contact detected," Iris shouted. 3 vessels approaching at high velocity." Lyra's face turned pale. "They found us," she whispered. Ethan gripped the controls. "Hold on." The stars outside stretched and blurred as the Starhawk jumped into hyperspace. The engines roared, and light swallowed the ship. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then they reappeared near a dying red sun. Ethan gasped, checking the readings. "Did we lose them?" "Unclear," Iris said. Their technology may allow pursuit. Lyra moved closer to the viewport, staring at the fading star. Her expression was distant, haunted. My world once looked like that, she said quietly. Bright, alive. Before we took too much, Ethan watched her in silence. He didn't know what destiny had brought her into his life. But deep down he knew one thing, whatever was coming. He couldn't abandon her now. Lyra turned to him slowly, her silver eyes glowing once more. If you stay with me, human, your life will never be the same. Ethan smiled slightly. Yeah, I figured that out the moment you tried to strangle me. For the first time, she didn't look angry, she looked almost human. Outside, the dying star flickered, and somewhere in the vast dark, the hunters changed course. Following the signal through hyperspace, the message had been sent, the princess was awake, and the stars were beginning to whisper her name again. The Starhawk drifted in the shadow of a dying red sun, its hull cracked and glowing faintly from the last jump. Inside, the ship was quiet, only the low hum of life support breaking the silence. Ethan sat in the cockpit staring at the radar display. 3 red dots blinked at the edge of the screen, moving closer with every passing second. Iris, he said, his voice low and steady. Confirm visual range, the AI responded immediately. Confirmed, 3 unknown ships inbound. Design matches no known human registry. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. So they found us, he muttered. From behind him, Lyra's voice came softly. They never stop hunting, they are bound to their mission, like shadows that never fade. Ethan turned to look at her. She stood tall despite her exhaustion, the faint glow of her violet skin reflecting the red sunlight pouring through the viewport. What will they do if they catch us? He asked. Lyra's eyes darkened. They will take me back, and they will erase you. Ethan gave a small, humorless laugh. Yeah, thought so. He flipped a few switches on the console. Then let's make sure that doesn't happen. Iris spoke again. Warning, the enemy ships are charging weapons. Impact in 1 minute. Ethan grabbed the control sticks. Hold on tight, he said. The first blast hit before he could finish. The Starhawk shook violently, alarms blaring as sparks rained from the ceiling. Lyra stumbled, grabbing the edge of the seat to keep her balance. Ethan shouted over the noise. Shields? Barely holding, Iris replied. Another hit and we'll lose the port engine. Ethan gritted his teeth. Not today, he said, pulling the ship into a steep roll. The Starhawk twisted through the debris field of an old asteroid belt. Chunks of rock and metal spun around them as laser fire streaked past like lightning. One of the enemy ships followed closely. Moving with perfect precision, Lyra's eyes glowed brighter, her hands trembling as she watched the battle unfold. I can help, she said suddenly. Ethan glanced at her. What can you do? They have plasma cannons, we've got duct tape and bad luck. She didn't answer. Instead, she closed her eyes, her lips moving silently. A faint purple light spread across her skin. The ship's lights flickered, and the air filled with a low humming sound. Iris's voice crackled through the speakers. Energy surge detected. Source unknown. Ethan's hair stood on end as the glow from Lyra's body pulsed like a heartbeat. Outside, the red sun dimmed slightly. The nearest enemy ship began to spark violently. Its engines flared, then exploded in a blinding flash. Ethan's mouth fell open. What did you just do? Lyra opened her eyes slowly, her expression unreadable. I borrowed light from the dying star, she said quietly, and gave it back to its children. Ethan blinked, trying to make sense of it. That's not normal, he said. Lyra smiled faintly. Neither am I. The remaining 2 ships circled back, moving in tighter formation. They won't stop, Iris warned. Their power readings are increasing. Ethan slammed his hand on the console. I know. Just buy me a little more time. Lyra looked at him curiously. What are you doing? Ethan grinned. Something stupid. He pulled the Starhawk up sharply, flying straight toward the enemy ships. The warning lights flashed red across the dashboard. Collision course detected, Iris said. Ethan replied. That's the idea. At the last second, he veered downward, the ship scraping past one of the attackers so closely that the hull screamed in protest. The second ship fired a volley of plasma bolts, one grazing the engine. Flames erupted from the side of the Starhawk. Ethan cursed, trying to stabilize the ship. We're hit! Iris, reroute power to life support. Already done, Iris replied, her tone calm despite the chaos. Lyra moved to the viewport, her eyes glowing again. Her voice was soft but full of fury. "They think they can cage me again," she said. "They forget who I am." Before Ethan could respond, a sphere of light appeared in her hand, swirling like liquid fire. She lifted it gently and pressed it against the glass. The light passed through as if the metal didn't exist, spreading into the vacuum of space. The light grew, expanding outward like a pulse. When it touched the two enemy ships, their weapons flickered and died. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the glow vanished. The ships drifted helplessly, their engines silent. Ethan stared in awe. "You just shut down 2 warships with a light show," he said breathlessly. Lyra's voice was calm. "I didn't destroy them. Not yet. Mercy is a choice." Ethan shook his head, half amazed, half terrified. "You really are something else." Lyra looked at him, her expression softening. "And yet, you still call me girl," she said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. "Well, princess sounds a little too formal." Iris interrupted them. "Ethan, new reading detected. A massive ship is entering the sector." Ethan's smile faded. "Bigger than the last ones?" "Yes," Iris said. "Much bigger." Lyra turned toward the viewport, her silver eyes reflecting the distant light of a colossal ship emerging from hyperspace. The shadow it cast stretched across the dying sun. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That is the Dominion Warden, the one who sealed me away." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "Then we run," he said. Lyra shook her head slowly, her tone colder than the void. "No, Ethan Cross. This time, we fight." Outside, the stars seemed to fade as the Warden's engines roared. The hunters had found their prey, and the war for freedom had just begun. The wreckage of the battle drifted in silence, pieces of metal glowing faintly under the dying light of the red sun. The Starhawk floated between the debris, its engines smoking, its systems weak but alive. Inside the cockpit, Ethan wiped blood from his forehead and leaned against the control panel. His hands trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes still burned with determination. "We survived," he muttered under his breath. Iris's voice came through the static-filled speakers. "Barely. Hull integrity is at 40%. Energy reserves at 12. Ethan laughed softly. "That's still better than 0. Behind him, Lyra stood near the viewport, her silver eyes watching the floating ruins of the Dominion ships. Her violet skin shimmered faintly, though her strength seemed drained. She had used too much energy during the fight, and Ethan could see the toll it had taken. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer at first. Then she turned her head slightly, her voice calm, but distant. "They will not stop. The Dominion Warden will follow until I am captured or destroyed." Ethan frowned. "Then we need to know why you matter so much to them." Lyra's gaze shifted to the back of the ship where the container still rested, half open. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The answer is still inside." Ethan followed her stare, a chill crawling down his spine. He remembered the strange symbols on the walls of the container, the faint light, the pulse that had awakened her. "Let's find out what else your people were hiding," he said, grabbing a flashlight. They entered the cargo bay together. The air was cold and heavy, the walls scorched from the earlier blast. The container loomed like a dark monument, its surface covered in ancient symbols that now glowed faintly blue. Lyra reached out, her fingers brushing the markings. "They react to my blood," she said softly. Lines of light began to trace across the metal, forming shapes, patterns, and then a door. It slid open silently, revealing a small inner chamber. Inside was something strange and beautiful. A crystal orb floated in the air, spinning slowly, glowing with golden light. Tiny sparks of energy swirled inside it. Like a galaxy trapped in glass, Ethan stepped closer, his eyes wide. "What is that?" Lyra's voice trembled as she spoke. "The seed of a Larian." Ethan turned to her, confused. "Seed? Like a plant?" Lyra shook her head, her expression solemn. No. A memory. A code. A living map. It holds the essence of my world, every city, every star, every soul that once lived there. Ethan's breath caught. You're saying your entire civilization is inside that thing? She nodded slowly. Yes, and the Dominion sealed it with me, because I refused to let them use it as a weapon. The light from the seed reflected in her eyes. Ethan could see pain, regret, and something else. Hope. He stepped closer, careful not to touch it. So this is what they're after, he said quietly. Lyra replied, if they get it, they will recreate Alarion not as a world of beauty, but as a fortress of control, feeding on the stars. Iris's voice broke the silence. Ethan, the energy readings are increasing. The seed is activating. Ethan looked at Lyra. Did you do that? Lyra shook her head, fear flashing in her eyes. No, it's responding to something outside. The ship trembled, the lights flickering again. Iris's tone grew urgent. Massive gravitational distortion detected. Something is pulling us in. Ethan rushed to the console. What's causing it? Before Iris could answer, the seed pulsed once, and the world around them changed. For a brief moment, the cargo bay vanished, replaced by endless light and floating structures of energy. Ethan looked around in awe. Where are we? Lyra's voice was soft, filled with emotion. This is the heart of Alarion, a memory of my home. They stood on a shimmering platform above a vast ocean of stars. Giant crystal towers rose from below, glowing with life. But as they watched, the towers began to collapse, fading into dust. Lyra fell to her knees, tears in her eyes. They destroyed it all, she whispered, for power, for fear. Ethan knelt beside her, unsure what to say. The seed glowed brighter, and a soft voice echoed in their minds. Heir of Alarion, the time has come to choose. Lyra gasped, looking around. That voice. It's the seed's guardian. The voice continued. If the seed awakens, it will reshape worlds, restore what was lost, or destroy what remains. Ethan's heart pounded. So it's alive? Lyra nodded. It's more than alive. It decides who is worthy. The light dimmed suddenly, and they were pulled back into the ship. Ethan stumbled, gasping for air. The seed floated silently, glowing with a faint golden pulse. Lyra stared at it, her expression serious. It has accepted me again, but the choice will not be easy. Ethan frowned. What choice? Lyra met his gaze, her voice quiet but filled with power. To rebuild what was lost, or to let it burn forever. Before Ethan could answer, the alarm blared once more. Iris spoke urgently. Dominion Warden entering orbit. They've found us. Ethan's blood ran cold. He looked at Lyra, who now stood tall, the golden light of the seed reflecting across her skin. Her eyes burned brighter than before. They want the seed, she said, her voice steady. Then they will have to face the fury of Alarion itself. The ship shook as explosions echoed in the distance. Ethan rushed to the controls. Then let's give them a welcome they'll never forget, he said. Lyra raised her hand, the seed floating beside her. Her voice was calm but fierce. Let the stars remember who we are. Outside, the dying sun flared one last time, and the Starhawk turned to face the shadow of the Warden. The battle for the future of two worlds was about to begin. The Starhawk floated in the red twilight of the dying sun, its engines barely holding power. Inside, tension filled the air like a storm waiting to break. Ethan stood in the cockpit, watching the Dominion Warden move closer, its shadow covering half the sky. Lyra stood beside him, the seed of Alarion floating near her shoulder. Glowing softly like a golden heart, Iris, Ethan said. Status report. The AI replied, calm but urgent. Shields at 30%, weapons offline, energy output minimal. Ethan exhaled slowly. We can't fight that thing. Lyra's voice was cold and certain. We won't need to fight it alone. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, the radar beeped, new signals flashing across the screen. Iris confirmed. Multiple human ships entering orbit. Identification. Terran command fleet. Ethan's eyes widened. The Terrans? That's impossible. They shouldn't be this far out. Lyra's expression darkened. Your people? Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, mine. Maybe we're saved. Within minutes, a deep voice came through the comms. This is Commander Hale of the Terran Command. We've tracked your distress signal. Prepare for assistance. Ethan let out a breath of relief. Thank you, Commander. We've been under attack. The voice interrupted him, cold and professional. Understood, transmitting docking coordinates. Stand by. Lyra watched silently as the Terran ships surrounded the Starhawk, their bright lights cutting through the dark. But something about it didn't feel right. Her instinct screamed danger. She turned to Ethan, her tone sharp. They are not here to help. Ethan frowned. What are you talking about? They're human, Humans, she said softly, serve power, and power serves fear. Moments later, a metallic clang echoed through the ship as the Terran boarding tube connected. Ethan and Lyra waited near the airlock, tension crackling in the air. The door opened with a hiss, revealing 4 armored soldiers, their rifles raised. Ethan Cross? The lead soldier said. Ethan nodded. Yeah, that's me. By order of Terran Command, you're under protective custody, the soldier replied. Protective custody? Ethan repeated, confused. Then he noticed the way the soldiers aimed their weapons. Not at him, but at Lyra. Stand down, Ethan shouted, stepping forward. The commander's voice came again through the ship's speakers. Cross, you've been carrying a Class A alien artifact. Hand it over immediately. Ethan's blood turned cold. You mean the seed? He asked. That's not your concern, the voice said. Surrender it and no one gets hurt. Lyra's eyes blazed silver. Her voice filled with fury. They wish to steal what they cannot understand. Ethan glared at the soldiers. She's not a threat. One of the soldiers barked, Step aside, sir. When Ethan didn't move, the soldier raised his weapon. In that instant, Lyra raised her hand. A pulse of energy flashed through the air. The soldiers were thrown backward, their armor sparking with static. Ethan shouted, Lyra, stop! Her voice trembled with anger. They would have killed you. Ethan looked down at the unconscious soldier's heart pounding. I know, but now they'll call us enemies. Lyra's expression softened slightly. Then we run. Before they could move, Iris spoke urgently. Ethan, the Terran command ship is locking weapons on us. Ethan turned to the console, his voice rising. Are you kidding me? They're gonna fire on their own man? Correction, Iris said coldly. They have labeled you as a collaborator. A blinding flash lit up the viewport. The Starhawk rocked violently as the blast hit, alarms screaming across every deck. Ethan stumbled, gripping the controls. Shields down! Iris shouted. Lyra closed her eyes, focusing her energy. A shimmering barrier formed around the ship, glowing with violet light. The next blast hit and stopped in midair, absorbed by her power. Ethan stared in disbelief. You're holding it back? Lyra's voice shook with strain. I cannot hold it long. Ethan rushed to her side. Then we make it count, Iris. Prep the engines. We're jumping out of here. Coordinates? The AI asked. Anywhere but here, Ethan shouted. The Starhawk's engines flared to life, shaking violently as they reached maximum power. Outside, the Dominion Warden and Terran ships turned their guns toward each other. Neither willing to share the prize in the chaos, the Starhawk vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a field of fire and betrayal. Silence filled the ship again, only the sound of the engines humming softly. Ethan slumped into the pilot's seat, exhausted. He turned to Lyra, who sat quietly beside him, her eyes dim but steady. You saved us, he said. She smiled faintly. You saved me first. Ethan leaned back, staring at the stars stretching endlessly before them. He couldn't believe what had happened. His own people, the humans he thought he could trust, had tried to kill them. Lyra spoke softly, breaking the silence. Now you see why I could not trust my empire. Power corrupts all species, human or alien. Ethan nodded slowly. Maybe, he said, but not everyone's the same. We'll find someone who will help us. Lyra looked at him with quiet sadness. There is no one left who can, she said. Only us. Ethan turned to her. Then that's enough, he said firmly. The seed of Valerian floated quietly between them, its light steady and calm. But deep inside it something had changed. A new pattern pulsed, not of Ilarion, not of the Dominion, but something new, something human. The bond between them had awakened something the galaxy had never seen before. As the Starhawk drifted into the unknown, Lyra whispered softly, "The stars are watching, Ethan Cross. They know what we've done." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then let's give them something worth watching." Outside, the stars glimmered brighter, and far behind them, the Dominion Warden and the Terran fleet burned. The war had changed. Now the hunted had become the spark of rebellion. The Starhawk drifted silently through the cold darkness. Far beyond any known star map, its engines whispered like tired lungs, keeping the small ship alive in the endless void. Ethan sat at the pilot's seat, staring at the swirling blue lights of hyperspace fading behind them. His body ached, his mind heavy, but he didn't dare rest. Too much had happened, too many had died, and the galaxy felt smaller now. Colder. Lyra sat beside him, quiet and still. The seed of Ilarion hovered near her, glowing softly with golden light. Her violet skin shimmered faintly, and her eyes reflected both sorrow and fire. She looked less like a prisoner now, and more like something ancient, something divine. Ethan glanced at her and spoke gently. "You haven't said a word since we left the battlefield." She turned her head slowly, her voice soft but strong. "I am listening." "To what?" Ethan asked. "To the stars," she replied. "They remember what was lost, and they are calling me back." Ethan frowned slightly. "Calling you back where?" Lyra stood, walking toward the viewport, her silhouette framed by starlight. "To Ilarion," she said. "Or what remains of it." Ethan blinked. "I thought your world was gone." "It is," she said quietly. "But the seed can bring it back." He looked at the glowing orb. "That thing can rebuild a planet?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, but at a cost. The seed carries all the life that once was. Every soul, every dream, it can be reborn. But only through sacrifice." Ethan's heart sank. What kind of sacrifice? Lyra didn't answer. Her silence said everything. Before Ethan could speak again, Iris's voice broke the quiet. "Warning, incoming signal." Multiple contacts detected. Ethan turned sharply. "Who now?" Iris paused before replying. "Dominion Warden and remnants of the Terran fleet. They've joined forces." Ethan froze. "Joined forces?" "Yes," Iris said grimly. "They are tracking the seed's signature." "Interception in 20 minutes." Ethan slammed his hand on the console. "Of course they teamed up. Greed makes strange friends." Lyra closed her eyes. "They will not stop until one of us is gone." Her voice was calm but carried the weight of destiny. Ethan looked at her. "Then we finish this right here." Lyra turned to face him, her expression soft. "This is not your war." "Ethan," he smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I opened that container, didn't I? Guess that makes it my problem too." For the first time, a real smile touched her lips. "Then we fight together," she said. The Starhawk turned to face the darkness ahead, its engines roaring weakly. Outside, the Warden appeared, massive, glowing with power. Surrounded by Terran destroyers, a voice echoed through the comms, deep and cruel. "Princess Lyra Vera, surrender the seed, or we will erase you and your human pet." Lyra's eyes flashed silver, her voice sharp as lightning. "Come and try." The enemy fleet opened fire, waves of plasma bolts cutting across the void. Ethan pulled hard on the controls, dodging as explosions lit up the black sky. "Iris, divert all power to the main thrusters," he shouted. "Done," she replied. But it wasn't enough. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running on hope alone, Lyra stepped forward. The seed floating before her, its light growing brighter, her voice became deeper, echoing like many voices speaking as one. "The time of hiding is over," she said. "Ilarion will rise." A beam of golden light burst from the seed. Expanding outward, it spread across the battlefield like a sunrise, washing over every ship, every weapon. Ethan shielded his eyes. "What's happening?" Lyra's voice echoed softly. "I'm awakening it." The light touched the Dominion ships, and their metal hulls began to twist and break apart. But instead of exploding, they dissolved into streams of energy that flowed into the seed. The Terran ships followed, their weapons vanishing like dust in the wind. The stars around them flickered as the void filled with light. Ethan could feel it in his bones. Something ancient and alive was returning. Lyra floated above the floor, her body surrounded by radiant energy. Her eyes glowed brighter than the sun. Her voice filled the entire ship. For every star they consumed, for every soul they silenced. "I return their light," Ethan shouted. "Lyra, stop. You're burning yourself out." She looked at him with warmth in her gaze. "It's the only way, Ethan." He reached for her, but his hand passed through pure light. Her voice trembled. "You showed me humanity, courage, kindness and heart. Now I will give it back to the stars." The seed flared once more, flooding the sky with golden fire. The Dominion warden shattered like glass. The Terran fleet vanished without a trace. When the light faded, the void was quiet again. The red sun burned brighter, reborn with new life. Ethan stood alone in the cockpit, the air still and calm where Lyra once stood. Only faint golden dust remained. Drifting gently like starlight, he whispered her name. "Lyra." Then from the speakers, Iris's voice came softly. "Ethan." "Look outside," he turned to the viewport. Before him, a new world was forming, blue oceans, white clouds, green lands. It was beautiful, alive, glowing with the same golden light as the seed. "Ilarion," he whispered. He smiled faintly, tears in his eyes. She did it. The Starhawk floated above the newborn world. Ethan sat quietly, staring at the miracle before him. For the first time, the stars didn't feel cold anymore. They felt alive, he whispered softly. "Goodbye, Princess." And as the golden light of Ilarion filled the horizon, the story of Ethan Cross and the furious alien princess became a legend whispered among the stars. A story of courage, sacrifice, and the rebirth of hope.